Today, we're going to sew the Delta skirt. It's a fluid jersey skirt, and its special feature is its asymmetrical shape. It was mainly designed to teach you how to sew an elastic waistband, enclosed in the waist seam. You don't need a serger to make this skirt. I'll show you how to finish all the seams with a zigzag stitch, and we'll use the same method for the hem. First, I'm going to show you how to cut your pattern. I'm using a small piece of jersey fabric for the demonstration. First, look along the edge of the fabric and find this strip. These are the selvages, so you'll have one on each side of your piece of fabric. They feel a bit stiff, almost like they've been glued. Place these two edges right sides together. Preferably secure the layers with pins or clips. Your fabric is now folded in two. The grain line runs in this direction, parallel to the selvage. To make things even easier, you can also pin this edge at the top. Along the side, a fold has formed. This fold will be very useful for most sewing patterns. I've reproduced my pattern pieces in a mini version, so they fit in the camera frame. When you see the instruction, cut on fold, simply align the edge of the pattern with the fold of your fabric. Be careful with directional prints. Here, the leaves are pointing down, which means the fabric is upside down. They should be pointing up, so turn the fabric around. You still have your fold, and now you can place your pattern on the fold in the correct direction. This is the top of my pattern, and this is the top of my fabric. The Delta skirt pattern is made of two pieces, both cut twice. The first piece is the side of the skirt, which is cut on the fold. The second piece is the front and back of the skirt. It is not cut on the fold, but it is still cut twice.
On this pattern, the arrow shows the grain line, and the tip of the arrow points to the top of the pattern.
To secure your pattern, you can use pattern weights. But with a light fabric like this, it tends to slip and move. It's easier to use pins and place them along the seam allowance right along the edge of the paper. Now everything is secure. Nothing will move. All you have to do is cut along the edge of the paper.
Never cut anything but fabric with your sewing scissors. Otherwise, they'll never cut fabric properly again.
On each pattern piece, you'll see small notches. There's one here, another here, and two here. These are your reference points when you sew the pieces together. This notch will help you attach the waistband elastic. I'll show you how in a moment. This notch will line up with this one. And these two small notches match the same piece on the other side, since this piece is cut twice, and the two layers will be sewn together. I now have my three pieces, this time in full size. This is the side piece that was cut on the fold. I marked the notch at the fold, and the front and the back of the skirt. At the top of the pieces, you'll find the waistband notch here and here. And the side notches, one here and two here. If we go back to our pattern pieces, we know that this notch on the front and the back will match this notch here. I take my side piece. You can see the notch right here. I take one of the front or back pieces. My notch is here, so I place the fabrics right sides together and match the notches. Then I pin. First, I pin the edges at the top and at the bottom. Then I match the notch. I do the same on the other side. Here's my notch, and I match it with this side. Both sides are now pinned. We'll sew here and here with a straight stitch, using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. I place the fabric 1 centimeter from the needle right here. At the beginning, you can use a guide or a seam guide on your machine to help you sew straight. Start with a back stitch, Then sew forward. We've sewn the front and back to the side pieces. Now we just need to close the skirt. Same principle, right sides together. This time, I matched the 2 notches. And we'll sew the seam with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Before we go any further, we're going to press the seams open. This is a very important step. Every time you sew something, press the seams open. That's what really makes the difference in the final result. I open the seams with my iron. I'm not ironing, I'm pressing.
It's the heat and the steam that do the work.
On the right side, the result is immediately much cleaner. Since the goal is to finish the seams with a zigzag stitch, we now fold the seam allowances to one side of the skirt. Do this for the 3 seams we've just sewn. Then go back to the sewing machine and finish the edges here with a zigzag stitch. I've selected a medium zigzag stitch, both in width and length. I make sure to catch both layers together and we'll finish everything in one pass. The needle should go into the fabric on one stitch and just outside the fabric on the next. Here's what it looks like on the right side and on the wrong side. It takes a little practice, but with 3 seams to finish, you'll quickly get the hang of it. Now that our seams are finished and the machine is still set to zigzag, we can finish the bottom hem. Same principle as before. 1 stitch in the fabric, 1 just outside, but this time on a single layer, the bottom edge of the skirt. The entire bottom edge is now finished. That's the first step for the hem. Now we'll move on to the elastic. To determine the length of the elastic, decide where you want to wear the skirt, either at the waist or a little lower.
Ask someone to help you keep the elastic straight.
The elastic shouldn't be too tight, and it shouldn't be too loose either. It should follow your body comfortably. From what we measured on the mannequin, the elastic needs to form a loop around the waist. But before cutting, take that measurement and add 4 centimeters. And this is where we cut those extra 4 centimeters. They are the seam allowance that allows us to make a strong seam, so the elastic won't break. Then we form our loop. Those 4 centimeters are split in 2 centimeters on one side and 2 centimeters on the other. So we sew here exactly 2 centimeters from the edge of the elastic. To make sure the elastic never tears or shifts over time, be sure to backstitch at the beginning and at the end of the seam. The seam is done. I open it up. Now I fold both ends back on themselves, like this. And here as well, sew a straight stitch with a back stitch at the start and end. Do exactly the same on the other side. Fold it over and sew it securely. Now we have a reinforced elastic seam that won't give way, even if you pull on it very hard. At the top of my skirt, I have 4 reference points, the notches we marked when cutting the fabric. I have one here, one here, another here, and the last reference point is this seam. I also need 4 reference points on the elastic. The first one is easy. It's the seam we just made. From that seam, if I fold the elastic in half, I find the second point on the opposite side. I mark it. If I match this notch with this seam, I have another notch here, and another notch right here. I've divided my elastic into 4 sections. Now we'll work right sides together. I start with the back seam and match it with the elastic seam right here. Right sides together, edge to edge. Then I pin. To do this, I need to pass the entire skirt through the elastic loop. Now I can go all the way around the skirt. I find the next notch, it's here, and the matching notch on the elastic is on the other side. I'll add another notch here. That's fine. There we go. Your elastic is shorter than the waist of the skirt. Don't worry, that's completely normal. I find the next notch. It's here. On the elastic, the matching point is here. I mark it at the top with my scissors. Then I pin. The last notch on the waist is here, and the last mark on the elastic is here. I mark it like this. There we go. Now we're going to sew the elastic all around the waist with a zigzag stitch to keep the stretch. I start at the trickiest spot, right where the seam is thicker. I align the edges carefully, edge to edge, and my machine is set to a zigzag stitch. This time, the zigzag needle must stay inside the fabric on both sides of the stitch, but still close to the edge. Do a few tests first. If your machine has it, lock the needle down option, then start slowly.
We gently sew over the thick seam at the beginning.
Now that I've passed the thick seam, we can get to the real sewing. I stretch the elastic so it matches the length of the fabric. I don't pull the fabric underneath. It shouldn't gather. I only stretch the elastic, keeping the edges aligned. While keeping it stretched, I sew forward, stopping whenever needed to reposition. Don't be afraid to pause and adjust as you go. I reposition. Stretch the elastic well, keep the fabric straight and edge to edge, and sew forward. Needle down. When you're sewing with a zigzag stitch, always stop with the needle down. Here, I can remove my pin. I see that my notch is here, and the mark on the elastic is here. I match the two by stretching the elastic like this. I keep the edges aligned and sew to the end without moving my fingers. And now I can breathe. I repeat the same step until the next pin. And here, make sure to backstitch a little over your stitches. The elastic is now securely attached all around the waist. Here, the pins will mainly serve as reference points. As we sew, we'll adjust as needed. Here, the goal is to fold the fabric once like this, and then fold it again like this, so the elastic is fully enclosed. For a clean result, you'll need to stretch the fabric slightly as you sew. I start from my reference point here, which is the seam. I place a pin here first. I stretch the fabric so it lies flat, on both the wrong side and the right side. Then I place a pin, and I continue like this all the way around. Same here. My seam needs to line up with the seam. Now we're going to sew here with a straight stitch. As a guide, use the width of your presser foot and let it follow the edge of the waistband. On the right side, you'll see the bobbin thread, which creates a nice straight line all the way around. Just like before, I start at the most difficult spot, right where the seam is thicker. Needle down. Sew a little forward, gently pulling the fabric behind to help the machine. Now I keep sewing straight, stretching the fabric from pin to pin. You'll see that on the right side as well. Everything will lie flat. If a little ridge forms like this, just pull the fabric slightly downward, and it disappears.
Ideally, you should use a twin needle for this top stitch.
The elastic is now in place. The gathers are even all around the waist, and the seam is nice and straight. All that's left is to finish the hem. The hem will be very narrow because the skirt hangs and the fabric is fluid, so there's no need for a wide double fold. To start, sew a line of basting stitches all the way around, 1 centimeter from the edge. I set my stitch length to the maximum for basting and placed washi tape 1 centimeter from the needle. I start at the corner. Place the edge of the fabric along the edge of the washi tape and sew forward. No backstitch, we're just laying down the thread. On the wrong side, I use the basting line to fold and press the hem. I fold it like this and press. If you prefer, you can pin, always perpendicular, with the heads of the pins facing outward. Since the fabric is quite light but stable, I don't need to pin. It will stay in place while I sew the hem. The tricky part is here, at the corner. I press one side first. I shape the corner neatly and press. Now that the hem is folded all around, sew it with a straight stitch, using the width of the presser foot as a guide. I start where I formed the corner. I place the edge of the fabric against the edge of the presser foot. I lay the fabric flat. I make a small backstitch. As I sew, I make sure the fabric stays flat and that the hem is properly folded on the wrong side. I stop when I reach the starting seam and make a backstitch. The hem is sewn. It's neat on both the wrong side and the right side. All that's left is to trim the threads and remove the basting stitch. Just use a seam ripper. The thread will come out easily because we set the stitch length to the maximum.